Most conversations make me feel tired since my mom died, because every single one is another string of words that separates me from her last. Every new person I meet is another person that won't get to meet my mom, or see her flitting from stall to stall at fairs to laugh with friends. Everything, literally everything, feels like a reminder that she isn't here at our favorite fair. Which I knew, of course. I knew that this fair in particular would be the hardest to weather without Mom, because this is Stormsworth. This is where so many of Mom and Dad's older friends who have left the circuit come each year as a kind of homecoming. It also used to be one of the more humbly decorated fairs, and for that reason, it was one of Mom's favorites. She loved the ramshackle stalls, the dirt pathways, the baseball diamond-turned arena. She said it felt like home. And because I grew up coming here, it felt like home to me too. And it was the last fair she attended. That's a quote from The Renaissance of Gwen Hathaway by Ashley Schumacher. This is YA Book Chat, and I'm your host, Leah Stuhler.
Hey, I'm Amanda.
And I'm Claire. We're the hosts of Fictional Hangover Podcast.
Fictional Hangover is a podcast about young adult and new adult books, series, authors, and voice actors that is full of spoilers.
New episodes are released every Wednesday. You can find us wherever you listen to podcasts or on fictionalhangover.com.
Remember, the only cure for a fictional hangover is another book. Now, back to the episode.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of YA Book Chat. Thank you so much for being here and for listening. I am super excited to bring you this book today because I did not even know anything about this book. And my guest, the fabulous Victoria Koops today, told me about this book and was like, oh my gosh, you have to read this. It's the most amazing thing. And then when I read it, I thought, this is the most amazing thing. And it's so fun. And I'm so excited to share this book with everybody today. And you will understand why. It has the location of it is very special to me. So this book is called The Renaissance of Gwen Hathaway, and it is written by Ashley Schumacher. And so that is what Victoria and I will be chatting about today. Hi, Victoria. How are you?
Hey, Leah, I'm fantastic, and I'm so excited to talk about this book.
I am too, and I am like beyond grateful to you for telling me about this book because I just loved it. It's so fun.
I feel like at this point, your podcast is just like any recommendations I make are just an excuse for me to like geek out with a friend over whatever hyperfixation I have currently. And like this book was and still is like it for me.
I mean, that works. It works. So for everybody, we are recording this in December because in February is when Miss Victoria is going to have her own book published. So the next time Victoria and I record together, she will be a published author or just about to be, and I will be doing an author interview with her, which is super exciting. Do you want to say anything about your book?
I would love to. Wow, I'm getting like, well, this will be like Back to the Future PR for my book.
Mm-hmm.
It's coming out after the next time you'll hear my voice. That's really fun. So hello from the past, everyone. I wrote a book. It's called Who We Are in Real Life, and it is about, it's a YA book that's about discovering your identity using role-playing games, and features two teenage heroes who start playing a game together and develop feelings for each other, and then they have to like go through this like journey and quest both in game and in real life. So it's got like some small town vibes. It's got like standing up for what's right vibes, and then some fantasy thrown in the mix. So I'm really excited for it to be hitting shelves on February 6th, and hopefully by the time you hear this episode, you've already picked up a copy, everyone. But if you haven't, you can go to my website and you'll find all the information there to get your copy, victoriakoops.com.
Yes. And I will, of course, have a link to Victoria's website and all the things in the show notes for today. All right. Well, this is just going to be super fun. So I am just so ready to chat about this book. So again, this is called The Renaissance of Gwen Hathaway, and it's written by Ashley Schumacher. And I'm going to give you all a spoiler-free overview first. And in case this is your first time listening to the podcast, welcome. But also, just so you know, we will do the first 15-ish minutes spoiler free. And then after that, I'll give you a warning and then we will head into the spoiler section. So let me give you all the plot overview here about the book. Since her mother's death, Valentine Hathaway has been determined to make sure that nothing in her life will change ever again. That's why she keeps extensive lists and journals, has had only one friend since childhood, and looks forward to the monotony of working the Ren Fair circuit with her father. That is, until she arrives at her mother's favorite end-of-tour stop to find the fair is under new management and completely changed. Meeting Arthur, the son of the new owners, and an actual lute-playing bard, messes up Madeline's plans even more. For some reason, he wants to be her friend and soon dubs her Gwen and ropes her into becoming princess of the fair. Now Madeline is overseeing a fair dramatically changed from what her mother loved and going on road trips vastly different from the routine she used to rely on. Worst of all, she's kind of having fun. So that's a little blurb about the book. And oh my goodness, it's so fun. One of the reasons that when Victoria told me about this book was like, oh, I'm absolutely going to read that, without hesitation, was because it takes place at a Renaissance festival. Y'all, Renaissance festivals are my life. I love Renaissance festivals. I've been going every year since I don't even know how long, maybe since I was in middle school. I mean, I love them. I know it's been that long. I kid you not. So I absolutely love them. I'm obsessed with them. I've actually auditioned to be in one. Didn't happen that year, but that's okay. I still have aspirations of when my kids are older, working at the one that's nearest us. So I may yet do that. But anyways, so I will let you go first and kind of say what your overall thoughts are about this book and what you enjoyed.
Yeah, absolutely. First off, I love that the cover copy, the summary on the book says the monotony of the Renaissance fair circuit, because I'm just in my little, I've never been to a Ren Fair. I want to. I feel like I should live at one. I didn't even know people traveled with them. And I was this is a job. You could do this for a living. Mm-hmm. So I might be changing my career goals here. But I can't think of anything that's not least monotonous than traveling. It would be traveling with the circus, right? Mm-hmm. I was just when you were reading it out loud just now, I was that's hilarious. It says the monotony of the Ren Fair circuit. It
is kind of funny to think of it that way.
But I get what they're saying too, because it makes sense for Madeline, not Gwen. I want to keep calling her Gwen because that's the name on the title, but it makes sense for her character, right? I don't know how I came across this book. I have zero memory of where it popped up for me. I kind of feel it was either a recommendation on Goodreads or I just saw it on Book Talk maybe, but I kind of don't feel it was Book Talk. So all of a sudden this book just popped up and I was that seems similar to the area I write in. Seems like it would be up my alley. And so I placed a hold on it, got it from the library. I crushed this book in less than 2 days, which is very unusual for me because I listen to most of my books on audiobook. And oh my goodness, this book was everything. I love it. I love it so much. I enthusiastically adore this book for so many reasons. And I don't even know where to begin when it comes to why I love this book. We've got size inclusive characters, we've got queer inclusive characters, we've got grief and loss, and we've got lots of fun and scenic road trip vibes and summer romance. It's just
fun.
Instead of a freaking Ren Fair. So
I know.
it's like a book that makes me like warm and fuzzy inside.
It totally does. It does that for me too. I love it. And it is funny. Okay, because I do go to the Renaissance Festival every year. Like that made it a lot of fun for me, but also because it's from the perspective of somebody who works at the festival and travels from fair to fair, that was fun because so my favorite act at our local Ren Fair, they're called Barely Balanced, and they're acrobats. And there's three of them, and they're like varying sizes. So they nickname themselves small, medium, and large, which is really hilarious. Because when you look at them, they are. But and it's like two of them are married, and then the other one is like their best friend. And I follow them on Instagram, and they will post all the time, like when they're traveling from fair to fair and what they do at different fairs. But then they also post like in their like quote unquote off season, which isn't very long, but you know, they post like where, because they live in an RV, as you would have to for this type of thing. And they're always posting like, you know, what they're doing when they're like practicing, learning new skills or like vacation thing. And it's just kind of fun to watch them as they travel around the country, essentially every year doing this for their job. And
Well,
yeah,
kind of like the road trip vibes, right? Like that
yeah,
are, because this book has that like on the two fronts, because that's their experience being part of this circuit, which again did not occur to me that there would be a Ren Fair circuit, and now I'm obsessed with this idea. Like I live in Canada, and I live like smack dab in the middle of Canada in the barren wasteland that is between Calgary and Winnipeg, and I love where I am from. But seriously, we don't get a ton of like big event type things like this going on here on the prairies. And so I'm like, the closest like Ren Fair adjacent event would be like an SCA event, like a Society of Creative Anachronism event, which is a little bit more like historical in tone than like a Ren Fair where you can dress up as like a fairy and like a mushroom. And I just am like, I love historical costuming and I love garmentry. We'll talk about that later because like part of the thing I love about this book was all the like essentially costume changes. They weren't like they were, but anyway, cannot remember where I was going with that. I love historical clothing, but like I want to dress up as like a mushroom princess, fairy queen.
Well, and you know, there like the past couple of years, I have seen more and more women, not men usually, it's usually the women, dressed as mushrooms, like adorable mushrooms.
It's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. Like it's a whole thing. And I'm like, I need to get myself to, I actually don't really care about mushrooms, but like I want to dress up like as something super cute and fun and like weird that you wouldn't be able to do at like a historical reenactment kind of thing, right? But like the idea that there's a circuit and that there are people who make this their full-time, like all year round job. And like in my brain, I thought Ren Fairs were just in the summertime. I didn't realize that they like ran longer in terms of like a whole circuit season and everything. And so when I went down this rabbit hole, which I went down hard, Leah can attest to that. I was like researching the heck out of Ren Fairs and I was like, where's the closest one to you? Like, yeah, it's just, I think that's fascinating. And I think it's like, it reminds me very much of like circus performer kind of vibe where you live out of like an RV or a wagon or whatever. And you go to the next community and you do your performance and your thing. And I like that aesthetic. Like, I think that's really like, I don't know, it's just super fun. No, the whole book is so fun.
It is. And yeah, so because depending on like the climate that you live in, Ren Fairs, it can totally be all year and not just in the summer. Like ours is actually in October and November because it's too hot down here to have it in the summer. There's no way it would work.
Which little Canadian over here is like, what?
Yeah, no.
Because because like you couldn't do art. Well, actually, we're having a very mild winter so far. But like November, like sometimes we get snow in October, and like it stays. Not this year, but other years we've gotten snow early in October, and then it stays for the rest of the winter. And so like everything that's an outdoor event has to take place usually by Labor Day weekend, right? And so yeah, did not occur to me that these things would happen into the school year. And then I was just like, that's fascinating. And that's like a plot point in this book, is that they have like cool like fundraiser stuff happening too. Like it's just, yeah, like it definitely makes me want to hit up every single Ren fair that I can find. And there's a lot more where you are than where I am. So I'm feeling like a road trip to go to all the Ren fairs might be in my future.
I will go with you because that would be fantastic. And actually, so there is one that's in Wisconsin. It's north of Chicago. And so we could totally go that one together. I've only been there once, but I would, of course, love to go back. You want to know what's totally random about the when I went there? I don't know if I told you this or not. Okay. So my husband and I went to this Ren Fest in Wisconsin, and I think it's Bristol Renaissance Festival. Anyway, we're there and we're walking around and doing the thing. And I look over and I was like, that guy looks so familiar. And I'm looking at my husband and I was like, is that who I think it is? And so we walked closer and I was like, oh my gosh, it was Dustin Diamond, Screech from Saved by the Bell. I was like, what is Screech doing at a random Renaissance festival in Wisconsin? Like, this is crazy. I didn't go up to him and say hi or anything because I don't know. I was like, oh, it would be weird. I don't know. And he was talking with a couple of people, and so I didn't want to like interrupt, but I was like, Dustin Diamond is at this Renaissance festival. That's really fun. I don't know why he is, but it's really fun.
I like, why wouldn't you? Like, if I was like had a non like 9-to-5 work life, I would be like definitely going to many of these, because they just all the fun, all the like, because it has everything, and it's also kind of like role playing, and like it's live action role playing, and I'm a role player, and so and I love costuming and garmentry and like sewing. Actually, that is like immediately after reading this book, I like designed Ren Fair outfits for me, my sisters, our husbands, and like my daughter, like immediately. So that entire like Canadian Thanksgiving weekend, I was on my iPad being like, okay, I'll give them to you. You can include them in the show notes.
Yes, please.
Like different character designs.
Oh my gosh.
And it happened because I was like, this is the best thing that has ever happened to me. This book is amazing. I was so inspired.
I have to see those designs. You have to send me those. I need to see those.
As soon as we're done here.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I feel like we should, speaking, because you said, all the things that are in a Renaissance festival, I feel like we should take a moment to tell people, in case there are people listening who have also never been to one before, like what is involved in a Renaissance festival. So Renaissance festivals, it's a big, huge, I don't want to say fairground, but think of it like a fairground where it's just a big, huge like field or whatever that has all of these like, handmade like buildings and stuff. And it's supposed to resemble the like late 1500s, early 1600s in England, which is when the English Renaissance was taking place. So the Renaissance festivals like will have different like owners, and so sometimes they choose to do them differently. So some of them might choose to have it be like exact Elizabethan England and go that route. But others, like the one near us, chooses to just be more like general Renaissance-ish. So most of them they all have a queen, and it's usually Queen Elizabeth, except for the one that I go to, which Victoria and I have talked about this. The one that I go to, they have Queen Isabella. And let me just tell y'all how much this thing bothers me, because that queen was actually queen in Spain and died in 1504, before the English Renaissance even started. And so this year, every year it bothers me. This year, when I went to the festival in November, I finally asked somebody about it. Like when we first got there were a couple of the actors who were by the main entrance. And I said, my best friend was with me, and I said, excuse me a minute, I need to go ask them a question. So I walked over to the actors, and because I'm me and a theater person, I of course did it, in character, and was like, pardon me, would thou please tell me, I have a question about this. I said, would thou please tell me approximately what time period we are in right now? And she, of course, responded. So then I asked the question. I said, well, if that be the case, why is it that Queen Isabel, who was the Queen of Spain and died in 1504, is the queen over this Renaissance festival instead of, say, Queen Elizabeth, who actually ruled during the English Renaissance? And so it was a husband and wife. And she looked at me and she says, finally, somebody who is of a kindred spirit and thinks the same way I do. And I was like, oh, thank the Lord, I am not the only person who has wondered this. So essentially what she said to me was that the owner of that particular Renaissance festival decided to do it more generalized Renaissance-ish, because if you make it very specific, then there's like more kind of rules that they have to follow and adhere to. Mm-hmm. So it's more historically accurate. So he decided to make it general. So that's why he has Queen Isabel. It still bothers me, but whatever. Anyways, so that was the answer I got.
But there is a course, right? And
yes,
like that was, Leah was educating me, because I was like, I thought that this book was exactly the way Renaissance are. Obviously, I was like, no. But it's fantastic, exactly like this. It should always just be like this. But
it is. Yeah.
There's a court, and generally a queen presides over the court, and then she has all her like maids and ladies in waiting, and then there's like knights and jousting and different. Essentially, all the employees are they have some sort of role in this like medieval Renaissance, right?
Right.
Or not medieval, just in this Renaissance period.
Right.
But am I wrong to say medieval? Because like I kind of feel like it seems like a braided like medieval fantasy and Renaissance, and medieval fantasy and Renaissance. It seems like they just kind of braid all those together.
So medieval and Renaissance are like right there with each other. They're very close. I feel like there's like a fine line between them, but they are like right there. So it's very similar. But yeah, there's the queen, her court, all of her ladies in waitings. There's a sheriff usually. There are fairies. Okay. And let me tell you, these fairies that are at these Ren Fests are like insane. The wings that they wear alone, the wingspan on these things is crazy. No pun intended, I guess. Anyway, so there is usually like, sometimes there are wandering minstrels, like in this one. We have our fabulous bard, Arthur, and I absolutely adore him. And
I love him so much.
I know. He's just the best. He's so cute and fun, and I absolutely love him. And let's see what else. So each Renaissance festival does do it a little bit differently with exactly who is in the court and like who like the townspeople are, the actors who are the townspeople, but it's generally the same. And then there are sometimes there are special performers. Like at ours, there's a guy who is a dragon, And oh my gosh, his costume is the most freaking amazing thing ever. And I always try and see him, but I hate when I miss him because sometimes I miss he only comes out at certain times. So he's a dragon. We have a tree man in ours too. So like he's on stilts and is like, he's a tree. He's a tree. And it's crazy. He's amazing. So, but anyway, then there are all these like different vendors, shops and things where you can find or buy like all kinds of really cool handmade. It's all like handmade stuff, like handmade journals and things from real leather. And of course, all the Renaissance type clothing you could possibly ever want. And there's like, the head pieces, the flower crown, anyway, all kinds of stuff. So it's just amazing. And it's just so fun because it's like you've been transported back in time. They usually do have rides for kids, but it's not rides like you would think. Like the one by us, oh my God, it's hilarious. They have this humongous, and I mean humongous. This thing has to be at least, let's see, 5, 6, 7. It's got to be at least 8 feet tall. And I'm not even joking. Like rocking horse. So the kids like climb up a ladder to sit on the top of this thing. And it like rocks back and forth. It's like a giant rocking horse. It's hilarious.
That's so cool.
I know. So they have, they're like Renaissance, like rides. I don't know how else to describe it, but like, anyway, so that's really fun. And then of course the food.
Yeah.
Is just amazing. They do have like the giant turkey legs. That's always a favorite. And there's all kinds of stuff. Now, ours does have pizza as well. I will say.
Ours does have pizza. I mean, like
you can't because kids. And honestly,
yeah.
Like when we go to this thing, like my youngest gets pizza because he won't eat the other stuff. My oldest will eat a turkey leg, but the youngest
if I was like the DM for the Renaissance Fair, I would just be like pizza because magic.
Yes.
Who cares? You're making your own little world, right? Like it's a high concept fantasy vacation like event fun time, and so you're creating your own little like world and story. It's that whole suspension of disbelief thing. And so I'm like, who says you can't have pizza in your Ren Fair world where Queen Isabella is alive during the mid 1500s and early 1600s?
Oh my gosh, when she's dead.
So, but I just think they sound fantastic, like, and so much fun.
They are. The other part of them too that I didn't mention yet is that there are shows, of course, all these performers. So like I said, there's like the acrobatic one. There's always usually like a sword swallowing or like fire swallowing guy. There's like pirates. There's a pirate show usually. There's sword fighting. There's this one duo who does sword fighting. Oh my gosh, they're amazing. What else? There's all kinds of. Oh, yes, mermaids. We have live mermaids at ours, and I know they have them at other ones too. And then there's
jousting.
The jousting. That's the big thing, which is amazing. And we're going to talk about that in a second because the jousting in this book is a little bit different.
It's so good.
Jousting on horses is how it goes at Renaissance festivals, except for this one in the book. But what else? Oh, well, the washer wenches. So like two like really raunchy ladies who are like, responsible for doing laundry, and they do this like whole little shtick, this comedy thing. And then, this is my favorite. Ours doesn't have this, but the one in Wisconsin does. And the one that I always go to, like where my mom lives, used to have it, but they got rid of it. And it aggravated the crap out of me that they got rid of this show. Cause I was like, it was the best show at the whole freaking thing. But anyways, a mud show. Here's what the mud show is. You have like 2 or 3 actors, okay, who at this stage, in front of the stage is a humongous pit of mud. And what they do is like, they'll tell stories and like, do like silly little bits and end up, of course, in the mud. And so they're covered in mud and it's just hilarious because they're just talking and telling stories and then they push each other in and they have mud fights and like all the thing. And it's the best show ever. I'm probably not doing a good job of describing it, but it was always my favorite show. Was the mud
like
show.
slapstick, right? It's like the Renaissance like slapstick comedy.
Yes.
Okay, I like it. I like it.
Like Punch and Judy.
Gosh.
It's hilarious. And then the one, and I've not seen this at any other Ren Fair, but the one that I go to where my mom lives, the one I grew up going to, also has a dunk pond. So like during the course of the day, the actors, walk around and will interact and talk with guests, but they also have little like shticks that they do amongst themselves. And so like inevitably somebody gets arrested, right? Or something happens. They get arrested by the sheriff and they have to go on trial. So at the dunk pond, they have the trial, they put them on trial and they like dunk, there's a huge pond and they put them in this wooden chair and they put it out over the water and they dunk them in and out of the water. And it's awesome. Like it's so fun. So lots of fun things.
So this has just become like a Renaissance Fair stand podcast where we just like, we're going to change the entire episode. It's going to be about like reviewing Renaissance Fair. Actually, no, Leah and I are just going to start a new podcast where we travel to Renaissance Fair after Renaissance Fair.
How freaking fantastic would that actually be though?
If anyone wants to sponsor us so that we can do it,
please do so.
That would be much appreciated.
Please do so. So we could travel around the United States attending every Renaissance festival and then do episodes about it and compare them all.
I low-key wonder if that would be like something you could pitch to a like travel magazine. You know what I'm saying? Like, because that
Victoria.
I doubt that would be a typical like travel magazine feature. I feel like it would
I
be
totally want to do that. That could be a show on the Travel Channel. Oh my gosh. Even if it's just like one season, I don't care. Like, you know what I mean? Like I would do it.
Like a behind the scenes of the Renaissance Fair Festival and like, it'd be so great because you could have like each episode be a different fair, but then you would also do the circuit. And so you would come across like repeat people that you encountered that year on the circuit, right? So you would see like how each is individual, but then you would also like get your reoccurring cast back, right? Like, oh, that'd be so good. Okay, so I'm going to scrap my next writing project and I'm going to start developing a pitch and I'm going to definitely change from writing YA books to pitching television in the next, probably 24 hours here.
Sounds good. And then, but we have to pitch them. You and I do this show. And I think that we totally could. All we'd have to do would be give them this episode to listen to and we'd be in.
Yeah. And we could just dress up in like different like costumes every single time. Like,
and I already have a bunch of them. I'm
not surprised.
Okay.
This is the problem because, like I said, like I love historical clothing, but I also took some costuming classes at university and have done like sewn wedding dresses and like prom dresses, all those things. So I love sewing, but because I'm like interested in too many periods, like time periods, like I never quite finished like a whole ensemble. So I've been watching a lot of like the Gilded Age and like that like Victorian Edwardian era television lately. And so right before Halloween, like I made an entire like Victorian walking skirt and corset and like blouse ensemble. And I'm like, I need to finish that before I let myself make a red shirt. It's like gowns, they have like so many layers that I'm like going to be making petticoats for the next like 20 years. So,
I know.
But I'm not surprised because Leah and I are like cut from the same cloth. Haha.
Yes. Haha. Now that we've talked about what's included in a Renaissance festival, let's talk about some differences for this book.
Are we
okay? They're not. It's not spoilers, though. I don't think.
okay? Yeah, I was like,
they're
are we
not really
switching gears?
spoilers. I just want to let people know. Okay, so in this book, instead of having a queen, this Renaissance festival has two kings who are married. All right, and then they also have. Okay, this is hilarious to me. But this Renaissance festival has a castle, and around the castle is a moat, which is normal, right? Except that the moat is a lazy river, and you can go swimming in it with like big alligator floaties.
I love how tacky it is. Like, and I love that the book acknowledges that it's tacky. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's excellent.
It is so fun. But I think the best change that they made here that the author did was, like we said, jousting takes place on horses. The knights ride on the horses, racing towards each other, trying to knock each other's shields off or knock each other off of the horses. However, in this book, there are no horses. Our two kings have decided to instead try something different. Well, one of them decided, the other one, camel jousting. Camel jousting. Just saying those two words just makes me giggle.
He said, jousting, which normally takes place. Like, you don't feel like you should have to elaborate that.
Nope, but you do.
You do.
So I just wanted to tell everybody, in case you've never been to a Renaissance festival before, that's not normally how it is, but it is supposed to be like campy and fun for this book, because actually the point of this is that, she goes to this festival after, her mom has passed away. It's been almost a year since her mom has passed away. And this was her mom's favorite festival. And so to come in and see these changes is a big deal for her. So it's purposefully like that, where it's just the fact that they're all like really ridiculous and campy makes it, not all of them. I mean, the lazy river and the camel.
Most of them are.
Most of them. It just makes it more fun.
I think it adds to like the queerness of the book too, because like I love that there are two kings, like, and they are kings, like,
oh yes, they are.
They are kings. Like, I love those two, and I'm dive. I am like, I am head of their honor guard because they are just like, I love them so much, and I love their relationship, and I love seeing them be dads throughout the book, and they're just fantastic.
I know.
But like, they're also very gay. I love that. Like the everything that's over the top, it's very campy, it's very theater kid who has lots of money and now gets to play with. Like, I'm just like,
because the dads also design costumes for theater, and so like it's all the things.
And they like have these like fairy godmother level skills when it comes to like, they are charming. This whole book is so charming. And so I'm just like, I can't wait till we get to talk without spoilers.
It is. I just want to mention a couple other things really quickly, and then we can hit spoilers. So another thing that I really liked was the fact that our main character, Madeline, is overweight. Like, she is not a skinny mini. And as somebody like myself, who has struggled her entire life with her weight and has been like every size on the spectrum, but most of the time has primarily been like overweight. Like, this was really great to see, because you don't normally see this in a YA. Usually the characters are all these like small, pretty, tiny little girls. And so to see somebody in this role who's overweight, and she's, a teenager, and she's, a lot of what happens in the book is spurned on by the way that she thinks about her appearance.
Mm-hmm.
And like reading this, it really kind of took me back to like when I was in high school and thinking about boys and all the things and
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, he could never like me because I'm too fat or whatever. Like, and so I
Yeah.
felt like it was just very relatable. I loved the representation that was there. It made a big difference for me, even though I'm now a grown adult, like I'm still bigger than I want to be, bigger than I've been before. And it's fine. But like, it's just, I don't know, it made me feel seen, more
Yeah.
than
That's
anything else though.
that's a really, I think, beautiful way of putting that, because like it, I feel like when you wander into like body image kind of territory, it always feels uncomfortable, or like um not necessarily dangerous, but like uncertain territory.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I like it's super relatable. I think lots of people have body dysphoria. Lots of people are, especially during your adolescence, where your body is changing so rapidly, and then like after adolescence, when your body kind of settles into your adult body, there's another kind of period of time where you're like maybe a little disassociated from your body. And so I feel like this book did a really excellent job of like approaching body, um, like loving your body or feeling at home. Body
Mm-hmm.
neutrality, that's the word I'm looking for. Because it wasn't like a lot of the plot was based on her perception of her body. But instead of it being like, no, you just have to love your body, rah, rah, which is an okay message, except for the times when you don't feel like that's possible. And Madeline had other things going on, like big grief things going on, that
Mm-hmm.
like just loving her body wasn't, like it was all tangled up in that. And so I really loved how the author approached like fat representation and having it be part of the plot, but not like the only thing that mattered in the plot, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't like by the end she's like completely 100% comfortable. Like she had to go through a process of like, and is still doing that towards the end, like by the end of the book. So um yeah, but everything that she did struggle with, I was like, I 100% struggle with. I've always been like fat, overweight. I'm tall, like I'm like 6 feet tall. And so I'm not a petite woman, and I never have been. And in high school, I remember like my perception of my body was so out of like it was so skewed by like what was seen in media back then, but also like by my own insecurity, that I couldn't see myself accurately ever. And I still think that's true to an extent, right? So
Mm-hmm.
like that the book explores that, and I think that's really cool. So it made me
Yeah.
feel seen too.
Yeah. It's so great. And I agree. Like she handled it in such a fantastic way. But it also, and then the other thing that I liked was that it does have this like grief and theme of grief and grieving. And, we see Madeline work through her process of grieving her, the death of her mother, as the 1 year anniversary approaches and as she gets to this spot. So, yeah, I think, unfortunately, we lose people in our lives all the time, and grief and death is something that we all have to deal with no matter what age we are. And so I think it's really good to see how this teenage girl kind of deals with it and processes it. Cause it's like you said, it's not like some stories where there's like, oh, everything's going to end with a happy ending and a like pretty little bow all tied neat and pretty. It's like we see the process and that it still is a process. Even at the end, she's
Mm-hmm.
not like, I'm 100% better. She's still working on it, which
Mm-hmm.
is realistic. And that's
Well,
why I really
and
liked it.
I work with teenagers. Like my day job, I'm a school social worker, school counselor, and I work with teenagers on like mental health um, issues, including grief and death and dying. And like she is written so well.
Mhm.
Like Madeline is written so accurate to, um, I think what a teenager how a teenager would behave in those circumstances. And like, even like, I was kind of blown away by how well her character was written, not just as a writer myself, but also as like a mental health professional, because like it was so realistic to, I think, how a teenager would respond in that situation, how they would cope, how they would develop like maladaptive coping strategies. Like you can see her developing strategies that are like counterproductive, and she kind of has an awareness of that. And like there's so much goodness there, and it's like this like that part of the plot moves so naturally and like brings everything home at this Ren fair, right? So you've got that like super high fun setting, like with lots of like humor and joy, and like, and then you also have like the conflicted like grief and sadness and body image stuff going on. And so like those are the types of stories that I like to write and like to read, because I'm like, I think it gives you an opportunity to talk about the real things, but also be like in a pair of fairy wings. Why wouldn't you want like fairy wings if you're going to be feeling sad?
Right?
Right.
Fairy wings just make everything better. And I know because
a little sparkle.
I have 3 pair of them. Anyways, yes, I do. She's laughing at me right now. But I do. Although, okay, I only use 2 of them though. Well, anyways, that's a story for another time. I am a storyteller as well, like a children's storyteller, and I dress as a fairy, and we do fairy tea parties and stuff. So that is why I do have multiple pairs of fairy wings plus all sorts of costuming. And I'm a theater person, so it just is what it is.
So hire Leah for your birthday parties, please.
Yes.
For fairy tea. I would if I didn't live like something like a billion miles away. I don't even know how far it is. It's like something like 38 hours driving, I think.
It's crazy.
Like
it's really too far is what it is.
Yeah.
But
no, I keep having to mute myself. I am wildly enjoying this whole conversation, and I really hope your listeners are too. And they're not like, so. Wow, these two are unhinged together. Because
listen,
a little bit of that.
If it's anybody who's been listening to my podcast for any length of time and has heard any of our other episodes together, like they're over it by this point. So
this is very on par. I just always feel like I have to apologize, but maybe I just need to be like radically accept that this is our dynamic and it's fantastic, and you're here if you're here. So thank you for being here.
Yes. And on that note, it's time to dive into spoilers because it has been way more than 15 minutes, which is fine. All right. So if you have not yet read The Renaissance of Gwen Hathaway by Ashley Schumacher and do not wish to have anything spoiled, then this is where you would stop listening to the episode and then come back and listen to the rest after you have read the book. But if you have read it, or if you just don't really care about spoilers at all, then by all means, please continue and listen to the rest of the episode. All right, you have been warned. Okay, the first thing I want to say, we really already talked about the Renfest setting and stuff, but like, I do want to say, like, when Madeline goes to this festival, that was her mom's favorite, and she gets there and she sees how much it's changed, like, and of course, you know, it's really upsetting to her because it was her mom's favorite and now it's all different. But I can say on a personal level too, like even without having that sentimental attachment to it, when you attend a Renaissance festival, like year after year after year, and you go to the same one because that's where you live and that's what's there, and they do change something about it, it is upsetting. Like, I'm not going to lie. Because I said earlier
when
about
they got rid of
the mud show. I was so livid. Like, I felt like this was a personal attack. I was like, we walked back to that I was looking at the map and I was like, where's the mud show? Why isn't the mud show on here anymore? What happened to the mud show? Like, I was so upset. Like, it's really hard because you get used to it, and you have, like, there are just certain, like I said, most of the Renaissance festivals have like the same feel to them, and they have the same types of shows and things. But like some of them do have their own little things, like the mud show or the dunking pond. And so when you go and it's changed and it's not there, it is upsetting. Like, and it's hard because you get so attached to it.
Like double hard for Madeline too, because her dad doesn't tell her that things are changing. Like he knows that she's been anxious and worried about this last stop, because it's the final stop on their circuit, and it's like where they finish their circuit every year with their mom or with her mom. And it's been the 1-year anniversary. I'm like, can you imagine just how triggering it would be that it's the anniversary of the first anniversary of your mother's death, which is often like one of the hardest experiences, in terms of that, like that first year is all the first, everything is new without that person. And Maddie's coping with that is like all of her lists, right? And then it's the end of your circuit, so it's the end of your work year, and you're likely exhausted from traveling and being on the road and the circuit. And this was like an important place to your family. And the final fair that you were able to attend with your mother. And then you get there and everything has been changed. It's now like this really like campy, like high fantasy, medieval castle, like high budget. That's kind of how she explains it in the book, is that it goes from being kind of like a homespun fair to being like really almost Hollywood glamorified. And all those changes happen, and your dad didn't really like tell you about it, right? And so like that would be such a shock to your system. And I'm like, you're right, without the sentimentality, it's already hard enough for us to experience change and be okay with it. But like, holy smokes, this poor kiddo, like, he has been through the ringer. Like,
I know. I feel so bad for her because there's so much stuff.
Well, it's like it's all different, and I can't even like imagine having to navigate something without my mom, right? So now she's like doing that on top of it. So yeah, but it adds like this depth to the book, which is overall very fun and lighthearted, right? So like, yeah, it's well done.
I agree. But then, of course, in the middle of all this, she meets this boy.
Oh my gosh.
I just can't. The fact that because there are so many different roles, like so many different, we'll say characters or whatever, right? At a Renaissance festival, who the actors are. But this is really the best one. He's a singing like bard. He's a bard. He just walks around with his little guitar playing and singing all the things. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Wait, you watched The Witcher, right?
I was going to say, all I could think of when he was like doing his thing was Jaskier from The Witcher.
Yes!
Lame in the same way.
Exactly.
Cool in the exact same way. It's like also super cool.
He's Jaskier.
Yeah,
he totally is.
Like, oh, I love him so much. I love that he like chooses the bard. He has again, super thoughtful choices that the author that she made around kind of the duality of like art's experience and Madeline's experience. Is that like he is also uncomfortable in his body, right? Like he's thin and lanky, and he's got like queer dads, which my book has queer moms, and so I'm just like, I just felt at home in this book. And like, so he could have been Prince, but he declines, and he decides to be a minstrel. The uncool, but also the coolest thing, because it's like, you know you're like not cool, and you lean into it, and so you're cool because you know, and you embrace it.
Yeah.
Like, yes. Oh, I
gosh.
love him.
I do too. And coming back to like, with like Madeline, I almost called her Gwen too. Um, I'm probably gonna do that at some point because he calls her Gwen. So like they meet and he's instantly like so sweet and so nice to her and wants to just spend all the time with her already. And she's like, "You're annoying. Like, what are you doing? Get away from me." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, he's just so cute." But because of all of her insecurities about her body and herself and all of these things, like she doesn't believe that he can like really like her. She has so many of these like inner monologues where she is like, there's no way. Well, because she also thinks that he's hung up on Bree, the other girl. And so like, she's just like, there's no way that he could ever really like me, even though it is so completely obvious to everybody else how much he likes her, and like not just likes her, he like adores her. I mean, he's like a little puppy dog, but it is super cute.
I was just gonna say, I'm like, he's like a puppy. Like he's like
Mhm.
like the moon-eyed, like just like you're like, and it's right from the beginning. Like, so I love that the attraction on his part happens like right away, and like kind of indirectly, it just like dispels the idea that like fat people can't be attractive or whatever. Like
Right.
by just having him like be into her, and then that she's the one who actually kind of has to warm up to like that even being possible. And
Mhm.
like, oh, I just, and he's just like, he teases her and he just wants to hang out with her. And he's like, can we be friends yet? And, but then he's also like, again, love these choices. And I can tell that they were done with intention,
Mhm.
that he's like respectful of her boundaries, and
Right.
he follows her lead. Like he's like, they address consent in like just very like simple ways, right? Like, and I just was like, yes, like I love me a puppy, moon-eyed, like doting fanboy who's also like able to regulate himself and say like, okay, but you said no, and that's cool. I'll talk to you later. Bye. Right? Like he's
Right.
not. Yeah, he
He's
never
not
like
pushy.
forces his. Yeah, he's not pushy, and like I'm just. Yeah, I love that. Love
Yeah.
that.
And it's like twofold because she keeps telling him that she doesn't want to be friends with him, but like he's like, well, let's do all these things together. And okay, I am gonna get back to the point of this, but like this is gonna sound weird, but like I go to the Renaissance Festival, and the festival is only on weekends. It's only Saturdays and Sundays, but it's like a month and a half to 2 months long, depending on which festival you're at. And I have always kind of thought to myself, like, I wonder what some of these like performers and vendors and stuff do during the week. Like, do they just rehearse all the time? Do they just hang out in their RV? Like, what do they do all week? And obviously, if you're like the acrobats or the sword swallowers or whatever, like there is going to be rehearsal in there too. But like but for like the vendors, like, because her and her dad are vendors selling jewelry and the journals and stuff. And so it was fun to see, like, to kind of be like, maybe this is what they do on the weekdays, like how Arthur takes her on all of these little like day trips to all these places that he's always wanted to go and explore, and he wants her to go with him. And I'm like, I'm just going to live in a fantasy world and like really enjoy this and be like, yeah, this is what it's like. Even if it's
This
not.
is they go on first dates,
Yes,
100%. Like that is the only thing that is happening during the week, is that they are falling in love. and
exactly.
maybe making some jewelry in between there.
Right. Making jewelry in the middle.
I
Yeah.
I think the day trips were just like really like I don't know, it added an element of like variety, I think,
Hmm.
to the setting, which I thought was fun. And then it was like I like it when there are books, like when like regional like nods get mentioned and they happen outside of New York, and like and LA. You know what I'm saying? Like when there's like wherever the ghost lights were over like the place that he kept trying to talk her into going.
Yes.
I'm like, that place is real. And I love that that was mentioned, or like the center of the universe where that like echo thing happens. Like that place is real. And so like these like little like regional shout outs, I just was like, that's so like cute and added some variety. And then there was like it moved the plot in an interesting kind of like in an interesting way that was outside of just life as a Ren fair, you know?
Right. And it gives us a chance to see a different side of the characters and helps them get to know each other more. Gives Arthur more chances to say, "Are we friends yet, Gwen?" But you know, and she like this was like so hard for me because I felt so bad for Arthur, because we as the reader know and understand why she doesn't want to get close to him, because she's afraid of getting close to somebody and then losing them again, like she lost her mom. But Arthur doesn't know that. And so we see him like totally like falling for her and having these feelings and adoring her. But she keeps saying like, no, we're not friends, or we can't get closer. And she keeps pushing him away. And you're just like, but, this is where I was like, would you just tell him already about your mother? Like, just tell him so that he knows sooner rather than later and he understands what's going on. But then again, there was the whole thing, not just that, but then the whole thing of her being in her head about what she looked like and her body and comparing herself to Bree, the girl who she thought that Arthur was in love with, even though he really wasn't. And Bree is dating Noah. Like it's because let's be honest, though, Arthur didn't really describe that whole incident at the restaurant correctly either.
No. And I love that he was an unreliable narrator. Like,
oh my gosh.
I was actually really worried when we got like, because Bree's not introduced until like 3/4 of the way through the book. Like she's a late game character who like just all of a sudden, and I was so worried that we were like headed for like tropey YA jail. It's like weird. Like to do the YA trope where the mean ex, and I'm like, I do not like this trope. It is like it belongs in trope jail. That is a TikTok, like a book talker does like these like trope jail things, and they like just rank I can't remember but I just think they're hilarious. But I'm like, yeah, that's where we're headed. And then Brie ends up being just like super lovely and kind and friendly, and yeah, she is built different than Madeline, but she is not mean. And so she's like not a mean girl vibe. And Noah is just like, he's even like a bigger doofus than Art. And so like he's also like golden retriever boy. He's got himbo energy, like 110%. And they're so adorable. And I love that Bree's like, yeah, we are into each other, but it's like not it's not a forever thing. We're just into each other. But then she's the one who's like, no, Art didn't tell you the full story, and like corrects his unreliable narration of events. And I'm like, yeah, that's on him. Like, dude, you like, for someone who's been so compassionate, kind of understanding of like Madeline, like you left out some pretty big details when it came to your previous like understanding. And I like that it made him a more complicated character rather than just being like perpetually good, because he is such a good boy. I know. But it's like, he's also dramatic. And I mean, like, look at his father.
But look at his dads. Exactly. His dads are like the two most dramatic people ever. And it is hilarious because I love how they fight, like the whole thing over the camels, because one of them wanted to get the camels and the other one was like, no, we're not doing that. And then he did it anyway. And then it was a whole thing. And then there was a mishap with the camels and it didn't work right. And they had to figure it out. And Dad's like, I told you. Like they just have these little like squabbles between the two of them that are so funny. But then they also have those like super fun, like sweet and compassionate moments. And then those like amazing, those like we're amazing dads to Arthur moments as well. But then mixed in, there's also the like, we're theater people. And we're like sewing costumes and can whip out, because, you know, Gwen was like trying so hard to like protest being the princess. And they're like, here, we already made you a costume. Like in 2 seconds flat, you know? So like, so
it's funny because like I started writing YA when I was like, well, a teenager when I was started writing, but like when I seriously started writing, I was about 21. And it's been almost 8 years. And so I'm getting closer to 30. And I like over the course of like that progress, I used to like totally approach YA from like just the teen characters. Like I used to be like so invested in like the adolescent characters because it's YA. Of course, that's where like the majority of your attention is spent. But now that I'm like getting a little bit older and like definitely like I read more like fiction and sci-fi and fantasy and stuff than I used to, like not YA, outside of the YA genre. Like more adult marketed books. But like I don't know, like I just paying attention to the adult characters more as a reader and as a writer. And I just am like, I want to be their friend. Like these dads are like, I'm like, I jive with you. I would love to be their friend. And
I
just,
totally
like,
would be
hang out with them. Go to the pool party with the whole family. I was like, this sounds like a grand time. Let's go.
I wanted to be at that pool party so badly. I was like, please, I need to be at the pool party. Oh, speaking of the pool party. Okay, so this is a totally different, like small note. I loved this like small moment, but it's like a big moment. If you're a young girl or a woman who is bigger and overweight, like this is a big deal. Like she was afraid to be in her bathing suit. Gwen, I called her Gwen. It's fine. Gwen, Madeline, was afraid to be in her bathing suit in front of Arthur and everybody else at the pool party. But his like aunt was like, you know, found her and was like, oh, I got you covered, baby. Like, and like pinned her bathing suit up to help it so that like her cleavage wouldn't be a problem, you know? And she was like, oh, I'm here. I got big boobs too. I know how this goes. We got it. No problem, sweetheart. And then she just takes care of her. And then that was that. And I'm like, this is what we need. Like, it's a simple thing, but you often need that kind of thing, like somebody who knows and has been there and can step in and just be like, it's really not a big deal. We're just going to do this and we'll fix it and you're fine. Get on out there and have fun. I was like, thank you. I
little
need you
but
in my
big
life.
moments.
Yeah.
Like
there was a lot of those in
big.
this book.
There were tons of them. And just, and I think done really intentionally, really thoughtfully. And like the whole, like all the family dynamic stuff in this book is really, I think, like it was realistic. It wasn't all sunshine, rainbows, and like hugs and kisses, but it was also like attached families, connected families, who are concerned with like for each other, but also in conflict, right? And so like the dads call Art out on his stuff, and he's like disgusted by how much they love each other, which is like just a very typical teen thing. And then you get like little moments with the little but big moments peppered throughout the whole story. And I was just like, I was living for those moments. This book made me laugh out loud, which never happens. Like I really don't laugh out loud, especially like just I don't. And it's like even rarer that I would cry while reading a book. But this book, like I think, definitely made me laugh out loud, and I believe I like teared up as she started to like recognize how sad she was. That to me like is a breakthrough moment professionally. It's like that when you have a student or a client that cries or feels safe with you, vulnerable with you. So I think when she started to like share with her like counselor that like, yeah, things aren't good. For me, that was like, I think they definitely misted a little bit, but it was like, yeah, just like all the way through peppered these little but big moments, and like well done. Right. And I think that's why you felt seen. That's why I felt seen, right? Like
Yeah.
that this book had those in there.
Yeah. It definitely, and that was a big part of it. And then, cause even like, we get to a part where it's towards the end, but like her and Arthur finally, like things finally come to a head because Bree and Noah push her and Arthur together because her and Arthur have had this little spat. And Arthur, of course, is clueless, but about all that, Madeline's feeling because of her grieving and about her body and all the things. But so Bree and Noah end up pushing the two of them together and getting them alone, which I just loved. And they have this conversation finally. And, she's saying, like, well, we were doing this and whatever. And she's talking about how, like, she didn't want to be the princess because all of a sudden Bree was there and Noah and all of his theater friends. And he was like, they just are helping. Like, it's just a thing for fun. And then we get to the part where she says, but you looked ready to strangle Noah every time he touched Bree. And Arthur says, no, every time he touched you. And then he tells her, I like you. I liked you from the second I saw you wandering around Stormsworth. And then at a different point, a little bit later, he tells her, at some point, you have to stop assuming the worst about yourself and everyone else around you. And that really is a lot of what she's doing, but it's so easy to fall into that, whether you're a teenager or an adult, but especially as a teenager in her situation, going through all the things, who's overweight, who's lost her mom. Like, I did this all the time. Again, myself, like I would always do the same thing and be like, that guy could never like me because I'm overweight and ugly and fat and because, of this or this. And it was always like, there was always some kind of negative thought and something like pushing it out of the way. You know what I mean? Like always this, like assuming the worst about myself and thinking like people around me are going to think bad things about myself, you know?
Yeah. Well, and like Madeline, like she's also socially kind of stunted. Not stunted, that's not the right word, but she has socially awkward because she hasn't had a typical like socialization period, right? Like you experience your primary socialization when you're like 1 or like newborn to 5 years old. Your secondary socialization happens over like a much longer time, and it happens like middle school and high school, right? Into those years as your brain starts to, it does this thing called pruning where it like starts to kind of create your identity. So you've learned everything you kind of need to know to survive, but now you're like pruning away information that you don't need anymore. And that's what develops your interests, your likes, your hobbies, your personality. And it's like very unique to adolescence. And so like she hasn't had a whole lot of experience doing that with other people her age, right? Like she had one friend that was on the circuit with her, but now is not on the circuit anymore. And we also love this friend because we love a sassy best friend character. But like, I just was like, yeah, she doesn't have a whole lot of experience with people her own age. And so then she's got the anxiety, the social anxiety that comes with that. And I just had popped into my head as you were talking about like her perception of her body and her insecurity. I also love that this is what I did when I was like about that age and feeling deeply insecure about my body. And about like feeling desperate to be loved like that. I remember around that like 15, 16-year-old Victoria was just so hungry for someone to affirm that I was like worth loving. And I wanted that to be like a partner. Like I wanted that to be another person. Not a family member, but like a romantic interest. And so around that time, like I was feeling all this like deep insecurity, but was so like overcompensated by being like almost aggressively like radically okay with myself. Like I'm totally fine with myself, and if you don't like the way I look, that's your problem. And kind of just like it was a defense mechanism, right? Like instead of just being honest about the fact that, yeah, I don't always love the way I look and I struggle with how I look and I struggle with body image, I'm just going to be like really aggressively okay. And she does that too, where she's like, well, I don't have an issue with the way I look, but also I totally do. And so she gets like, you get this like this conflicting like internal struggle that's always like this push pull in her, where she's like, he can't like me because I'm overweight, but I don't think that that's a problem, you know. And it's like so obviously not the truth.
Right. We haven't talked about her dad yet. Like,
no,
because part of her whole thing that's happening too with her grief is, you know, her dad, because now it's just her and her dad on the circuit. And her dad is also really struggling and grieving and trying to figure out how to handle it. And before we get down that serious road, I just do want to say, when you look at Arthur and his dads in comparison to Madeline and her dad, oh my gosh, could they be any more like complete opposites of each other? It's hilarious. They're just like so different sides of the spectrum, but I love it. But yeah, so her dad is also struggling and having a hard time, but the problem is that they don't really talk about it very much. And so like Madeline has her counselor who she talks with once a week. And we do get to see some of those sessions, which I love. And I loved like the questions that the counselor asks that we get to hear. I'm sure you liked that part as well. But another thing, a big aspect of this too, that her dad really like towards the end helps bring into perspective for her, is that Madeline has this whole thing about fate and like, can you change your fate, or are you fated to do this or that, because of that coin that her mom and dad had, that they would like flip and say, okay, we're going to do this because the coin says to do this and whatever. So she's constantly like looking at the coin, and didn't the coin, wasn't it like she flipped it and it said like not to be friends with him or something? There was something to do with Arthur. I'm getting something wrong.
I don't think she intentionally flipped it. Like I think it was like almost like an accident, because the whole, like at first it was like she wasn't going to flip the coin, because the last time she flipped it confirmed that her mom was going to die. Even though the doctors were saying the mom was going to get better. Right. And so, and then her mom did die, and it like in her head, in her grief, she was afraid essentially that like it's that easy to lose people. Right. So I think she was like avoiding using the coin, but it accidentally fell out of her pocket. Right.
Oh, that's what it was. Something. Yes, you're right.
Because he picks it up and like tells her, and it's like she had thought the thing in her head or something. And it was like, go for it, be his friend, or I don't know. It was like, I can't totally remember. But yeah, she was like, this whole idea of like fate and the coin, and like that her mom gave her the coin before she died. And this was the coin that they flipped to like decide if they should quit their jobs and start a life on the circuit, and if they should have a baby. And like, it was like, oh, if they should go on their first date, if they should join the circuit, if they should have a baby. And like in her perspective, it was the coin doesn't lie, and like the reason that all these great things happened was because of the coin, and because fate. But then she's like rebelling against that idea, and she doesn't want to believe in fate.
Right. And then her dad tells her that they flipped the coin, but it was just a thing for fun. They didn't go with what it said. And she's like, excuse me? You mean like I've been thinking this thing the whole time and it's a lie? Like, you mean you just flipped it and just did whatever you wanted? And he's like, yeah.
I got this though so much, because in our house we call that the litmus test, because we're a bunch of nerds if you haven't picked it up. But like a litmus test is when you have like this series of questions, like the 1 to 5, right? So on a scale of 1 to 5, how happy are you? And then you put 4. And then maybe later down in that questionnaire, it's a way to gauge like the correct or like the validity of a like research questionnaire, essentially. So you would have like the same question rephrased different ways. And if the 1 to 5 doesn't line up or it falls outside of a range of normalcy, then it calls into question the validity of that answer. So it's like a fail safe. And we do that in my household. We call it the litmus test, where we've probably made a decision, my husband and I, to, for example, buy our new house. But before we bought this house, we viewed another house that we really, really loved, and we're very close to buying. But the litmus test was to give it longer to like percolate. And then we ended up going with a different house in the end, right? And so I kind of got this idea of like, they were using it as a litmus test. They were using the coin to like prove to themselves the direction they wanted to go, right? So like they had, do we quit our job or not quit our job? Well, they already knew that they wanted to quit their job. They already knew that they wanted to join the circuit. Flipping the coin was just a way to affirm that. And I was like, I understand, I get it. This is where I was like, oh my goodness, I identify more with the adults in the book now. Oh boy.
That's hilarious. Just for that brief moment though, right? That's it.
Just for that brief moment. And then I'm back in there with my tiara being like, no, I want to be a princess.
Put the tiara back on my head. So here was something that caught me off guard too. And this is along the lines of like fate and everything, because the book opens with Madeline being at one of the Ren fairs when she was little. And there was a wizened old wizard who would pop up randomly at these fairs, and nobody knew who he was or where he would come from. And he would have like all these really cool, unique things in his shop. And he would like tell fortunes. And she goes to see him when she's little and, tells him that she doesn't believe in fate, but, she wants to ask him a question. And he's like, oh, you don't really, he's like, I can tell that, you're not really like into this, nothing is inevitable, good or bad. And so he's like, when you have something more important to ask me, come back. But she doesn't leave. And then he ends up giving her this globe necklace. And, it's a world, it's a globe. And he tells her, she's like, what am I supposed to do with this thing? And he says, you say that you don't believe in fate, but I believe you do. And I believe it's your fate to decide what taming the world means for you, which I think it's a really cool thing. And then at the end of this book, we find out that lo and behold, Arthur has the freaking exact same globe necklace because his dad was the wizened old wizard. And I was like, stop it. What is happening right now? Can I just tell you, like, that was probably one of my favorite moments in the entire book. Like, there's so much richness and things in this book. But when that happened, I was like, oh my gosh, his dad was the wizened old wizard. And he gave her the necklace. And then he gave right after that, which we see at the end. Then we don't see it at the first chapter, obviously, because it would be a spoiler. But then we see when he gives it to Arthur and how they have. And so Arthur knew who she was and that they were connected, like as soon as he saw her, because he saw that necklace on her. And I was like, oh my goodness. And then there's that whole thing like, so was this fated? Were we fated to meet? Like, it's just, it was just perfect. And I loved it. And
I loved how that like tied it together. Like I loved that it like, because I choose to live in a world where like magic exists. It's more fun and more delightful to believe that things can be magical and that fate maybe isn't like a hardcore rule book, but like that there's like something spinning, right? Like I just like the idea of like that there's something spinning and that there's magic out there. And so like this book, the way it ended really hit that well, because it was still kind of like, well, you choose what you believe, you choose what your destiny, what your fate is, but also coincidences, question mark,
Right.
what do we think, right? Like I
Yeah.
just was like,
Because she still even like questions it a little bit at the end. Because he's like, I told you that the first thing I noticed about you was your hair, but actually I did notice that necklace first. And he tells her, like, I saw it and I just knew, and he's like, even before we got to know each other, I knew that it was going to be you. And she's like, because of fate? And he says, no, because of you, and fate, and because of Tootsie Rolls, then this, and then like, it's just so perfect. And then the ending killed me though, because I was like, well, now I don't know what's going to happen. So they flip the coin at the end because they're like, okay, we're going to wait. I have to look for it because she writes it so beautifully well. And if I try and just say it, I'm going to screw it up. And it won't be as fun as it is when so they're talking about flipping the coin and they say that because it's the end of the fair now and it's also time for school to start. So they're like, well, they're both going to be going, well, she's leaving. He lives there. And so, he's like, well, what do we do? What happens to us? And then they decide that they're going to flip the coin. And Arthur says, heads, we stay in touch. I road trip to see you at any and all fairs that are less than 5 hours away. And tails, we follow each other on Instagram, like each other's posts for a while, and then you ghost me and pretend I don't exist when you become a major fashion influencer with millions of followers. And then he says, so you have this major following, right? And then one day you decide you're going to start making your own line of jewelry and it starts selling like crazy because it's amazing. And also you're an influencer with a capital I. He comes up with this whole thing. It's hilarious. But then, so they're like, okay. And then we don't see what the coin lands on, if it's heads or tails, and we don't know. And that's how the book ends. And I'm like, wait a minute. That's not fair. Which I know is purposeful because it leaves us to wonder what happened. Does it really matter what the coin flip is? Because as we just talked about, it doesn't really matter. We know that they've both probably already made the decision to do heads, where he comes and visits her at all the fairs that are as close as they possibly can. And they stay connected and like in love with each other. That's what I'm going with anyways.
100%. Yeah. That he comes and he has now like a whole wandering minstrel Jaskier repertoire. He's totally he's making a name for himself the same way his dad made a name for himself. And he just pops up at all these random fairs to visit her. And he kind of pretends he's there to do his busking thing, but we all know that he's there because of her. And they just continue to fall deeper and deeper in love with each other. And they have a wonderful life.
That's what we're going with. That's what I love.
Yeah.
But
the end.
But Ashley Schumacher, should you be listening and should you wish to elaborate on this story a little bit, we would absolutely love that. I would totally take another book, with these two further adventures. Yep. Just so you
100%.
No pressure, but we'd love that.
Excellent. I looked at all of her books. I think I've ordered 3. I think she's got 4 or 5. But I was like, oh my goodness, I have to read all these because this book was so fantastic. And I just loved literally, I don't think I had really anything that I was no real qualms or gripes or anything that I was I would do differently or want differently. I just, and I was just delighted the whole way through. It was just fun.
Same.
And poignant and fun, and these little moments that felt like big moments, and just all the things. And so I'm thank you for writing this book, Ashley, out there. And that ending, it reminded me of Rainbow Rowell's ending to Fangirl. I don't know if you've ever, or not Fangirl, sort of like Fangirl, but I feel like Rainbow Rowell does this in her books too. In Eleanor and Park. Sorry, have you read Eleanor and Park?
I've not read that one.
Okay, so that one ends like with a postcard that has 3 words on it, and you never find out what the 3 words are. Mm-hmm.
That's torture. Oh
I know,
gosh.
and it's been like, I don't know, like 15 years of just speculativeness, and I kind of love and hate those endings, but like this one felt like that in like the best possible way, and that's like a big compliment because I love Rainbow Rowell. So
yes, me too. But I agree with you. I absolutely loved everything about this book. Like you said, you read it in like 2 days. I also devoured this and read it super fast because I actually like double teamed it. Which sounds weird. I listened to the audiobook, but then also would come home and read chapters in the hard copy as well. Because I was like, I need to read this as fast as is humanly possible. And it's so good. And I just loved
so worth it.
Every moment of it. Yep. A Renaissance setting, our little mini Jaskier here. I'm always going to see him like that now.
With glasses, right? Because he's got like the glasses. With glasses. Like I just like it is freaking loot. Like I just am like, yep, it's the same vibe. It's the same vibe.
Totally.
Jaskier, when he's a little bit scrawnier and younger and has glasses, like Jaskier is probably the glow up version of Art, but like not that glowed up.
Right. And he's just like so perfect. And I mean, that's not what I meant to say. The book is it's just so fantastic. Like you said, it's just all these little moments. It's got these funny moments. It's got these emotional moments. We have the grief. We've got like, the body image and all the things that we've talked about. And it's just all wrapped up together. And it is just perfect. Like there's nothing I did not enjoy about this book. So highly, highly, highly recommend this book. And I'm going to read more of her books, hopefully soon. Well, thank you for chatting. I think we can wrap it up here on this one. And again, everybody, please be sure to look at my show notes so that you can check out Victoria's website and socials and all the things. And then you need to all go and check out her book because I have started reading it. By the time, obviously, this airs, I will be completely finished and we would have done another episode about it, like I said. But it's so good. It's so good so far. And I love it. And so you all need to go and check out Victoria's book. Would you like to plug anything or tell everybody where to find you? Or
yes, thank you so much for having me, Leah. As always, it's we're straight up vibes. We're so much fun. I love our dynamic. It's always a pleasure to be on your show. Thank you so much for plugging my book, for reading it and plugging it and being my friend and all the good things that come along with that. I'm super excited to be back from the future or from the past or whenever.
I know, it's so weird.
Talk about my book next. So if people are interested in finding out more about my writing, they can find me on social media, mostly on Instagram, Facebook, and some TikTok at Victoria Koops Writes. And then my website has all of my writing details, speaking details, PR, all that jazz. I've got a press kit on there because I'm legit now. So you can find that at www.victoriakoops.com. So yeah, I hope people come and check out my book too, because I really sincerely think if you like this book and you enjoyed this whole conversation, you're going to enjoy my book, because I write in a very similar tone and vibe as this one. So but mine has dragons, not alligator floaties or crocodile floaties or whatever, actual dragons. So anyway,
awesome.
Thank you so much, Leah.
You're welcome. And thank you everybody for listening, and we will chat again soon. Today's episode featured the book, The Renaissance of Gwen Hathaway by Ashley Schumacher. Be sure to follow YA Book Chat on Instagram and Facebook, and don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you get your episodes as soon as they are available. Have you checked out the YA Book Chat Patreon yet? You should. There are plenty of great perks at each level. YA Book Chat was created by, is hosted, and edited by me, Leah Stuhler.